Hello, Facebook, and good afternoon, Brentwood. I guess it is afternoon now. It is 1 p.m. on this Thursday, March 25th, and we are joined today by Brentwood Tree Board Chairperson Lynn Tucker. Hi, Lynn. Nice to see you.
Hi. Good to see
And we're
you.
also joined by Travis Morgan from Bartlett Tree Experts. Thanks for giving us that sky view today, Travis, in your vehicle.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I tell you, we got to watch all the weather out there today. It is going to be rough later. I'm hearing from the weather people.
Yeah, and it's been one of those typical Tennessee days where it goes from nasty to bright and sunny all in one day.
Exactly, typical Tennessee weather. Well, I know that with all the sunshine we've had lately, a lot of people are starting to think about planting. I know some of my friends have been talking about when can we put flowers in the ground and all kinds of things like that. So, it is Arbor Day week. So we've been doing all kinds of celebrations on our Facebook page this week. And so we want to just sit down and use this time for Ask an Arborist. It's not every day we get to talk to someone like Travis, who is an arborist representative with Bartlett Tree, and you have been for about the most of your career there. So we appreciate your time here today.
Thank you.
And Lynn, you want to start with some of the questions?
Yes, I do. And I will say that at our Sunday event at the library, we gave out 850 trees. Some of those trees were sponsored by Bartlett Tree Experts, some saucer magnolia. And let's just start with a question about those, because I think there were 300 of those given out. And maybe people would like to know a little bit about that particular tree and how big it gets, and about the planting of those.
So the saucer magnolias are a really nice understory deciduous magnolia. So unlike southern magnolia, where they keep their big, thick, waxy leaves all winter, they lose their leaves just like all the other deciduous trees, your oaks, maples, and such during the winter. So they're bare twigs. But during the summer, they're one of the first trees to start to leaf out and flower. And the saucer magnolias actually this week have been absolutely gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
The purple flowers this time of year are almost breathtaking, because they're one of probably the three trees right now that are in full flower, which redbud, the flowering cherries, saucer magnolias are really the ones right now that are looking spectacular. As with planting with those trees, they're in small plugs, so tease the roots out a little bit, get them in a hole about the size, a little bit bigger than a coffee can, and you're in pretty good shape. The biggest thing with those is make sure you know where they are, because if you plant them in the lawn, they're easily disappear and can get mowed over by accident.
Oh, I've had that happen many times.
I am guilty of that myself.
There is a question already, and we'll try to take these questions as they come. Can you still get a free tree? Unfortunately, every one of those 850 trees were gone within 2 days, most of them the first day. But so I'm sorry, you can't. Certainly all the nurseries, though, are ready for you and wanting you to plant some trees. The other thing, Travis, I noticed in our neighborhood, there's a tree that looks like a saucer magnolia, but it has kind of yellowy lime leaves on it. Is that just another variety of a saucer magnolia?
It could be. It wouldn't be a star, because that would be a completely white. There's a few different varieties of saucer, because you got anywhere from like a really deep purple to kind of a cream purple in color. Mm-hmm. But I have not seen one that's that kind of limey, yellowish lime color. So that one perplexes me. I'd be better off seeing the flower in person to tell you what type of tree it was.
All right. Well, let's come back to some basics with arborists. Why would somebody want to call an arborist about something? Why wouldn't they just go to Home Depot or Lowe's and ask one of the salespeople about what to do?
Well, the biggest reason for asking an arborist is you're wanting somebody that has some expertise in trees. So an arborist, for what I always say, is a tree doctor. So we're out there evaluating the health of the tree, see if there's insect and disease problems that can be contributing to tree decline, evaluating pruning needs, or seeing if the tree is actually unsafe and unfortunately sometimes has to get removed from the property. So we're going out there on a daily basis, evaluating tree health, safety, and aesthetics of the property to be able to get the trees to either better conform to the way the property is or be healthier in general so they can be a happy, healthy part of your landscape.
Well, and I know, and from personal experience, that I could call you or another arborist, a licensed arborist, and you could come out and do a consultation. And generally, that's really not a charge for that, is there?
Most of the time, we don't charge for the consultation. What we end up charging for is always the services that we provide. So either be pruning, removal, insect and disease management, fertilization, and then the samples that we send off. So soil samples, so we know where we are with pH, nutrient levels in the soil, because if we're out there doing fertilization, we really should be doing it based off of a soil sample, because it's like going to the doctor and then running blood work on you. If we don't know what's deficient in the soil, we're going with our best guess. And sometimes our best guess is good, and sometimes our best guess could be way off base. And when we take our soil sample, we're basing our recommendations generally off of the plant that we're targeting the fertilization towards. So oaks have a different fertilization need than pines, than boxwood, than holly. So when we do our fertilization, we try our best to target the specific plant that we're going to be fertilizing.
All right, well, let's kind of go back. Let's talk about pruning, because I'm into spring pruning now, and I always have questions on that. And we have a listener that is asking, is it too late to trim lower limbs on trees, or should I wait until after they've bloomed and leafed out?
Generally, this is the kind of little bit iffy time of year. Most of the time, you're completely fine to prune off a few lower limbs just about whenever you want to. There's a couple times, like if they're nice and flowering, obviously you can wait a couple of weeks till the flowers are gone, enjoy the flowers, then prune off the limbs. Some of the maples and river birches will this time of year run sap really heavy, so you prune the lower limbs off and they tend to bleed a little bit more. Whereas if you wait until after they've leafed out fully, they don't bleed. So that's a little bit better for the tree because the nutrients that it's trying to pull up out of the soil is not running out of a pruning cut. But in general, there's really not a bad time of year to prune off a couple of branches. If it's a flowering tree this time of year, I would personally wait till after they flowered and then prune them off to be able to enjoy the flowers a little bit more.
How about crepe myrtles?
Crepe myrtles, they're still completely dormant at this point. They're one of the last trees around here to start to leaf out. And with crepe myrtles, the fact that they flower on current season's growth, as long as you get your pruning done before they start pushing growth, you're completely fine.
So right now, it still is a good time.
Yes, and we're working really hard to get the last of our crepe myrtle pruning done before they start to leaf in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And how about mulching? I know this is a thing that we've kind of been educated to that we are not to put mulch right up butted against the tree and make like a volcano around the tree. But I see so many places where even, grass cutting people or lawn people that are adding mulch to these yards, they mound the mulch up till it's a mountain of mulch. So let's talk a little bit about what the right way to mulch is.
Ideally, you leave the mulch away from the tree so the trunk can breathe. The trunk is meant to be above ground and stay kind of 90% dry. Obviously, when it's rained, the trunk is going to get moist. But what you're wanting to do is to leave the area around the trunk exposed to sun and air, so moisture doesn't build up there, which can long term cause rot and other things to be able to get into the trunk. And then leave the mulch over the roots. What happens when you get the mulch mountains, the mulch volcanoes, is you've got a layer of area where roots will tend to grow above ground, and those areas and those really tall mulch beds tend to get drought stressed easier and cause the tree to stress out. So ideally, what you would do is have the mulching down to the trees planted at grade. You've got a layer of 4 or 5 inches of mulch that every year when you add mulch, you're adding a layer of maybe inch and a half that looks really pretty, and you're not really building up the overall mulch layer that much. And what the mulch is doing is it helps with keeping the soil moisture from drying out as quickly, and also soil temperatures down. So when it comes to mulch, I'm happy with just whatever natural products you can put on there, be it pine straw, hardwood, pine bark, even stones. I mean, the stones don't put any nutrients back into the soil, but they all keep moisture there and the temperatures down.
But they're kind of ugly, those stones, aren't they?
They can be. I mean, if you're in a more of an arid area like Las Vegas, out in the desert Southwest, it fits the landscape a little bit better than around here, where pine bark, the hardwood mulch, and pine straw is 90% of what is getting used.
One of our listeners has a problem with voles, actually moles and voles, because we've had problems personally with moles. Are there any suggestions on how to protect our tree roots?
Tree roots with voles is always a really tricky one, because it's really hard to control them. Now, sometimes when we get further north, up into Virginia, Pennsylvania, during the winter, they'll come a little bit above surface, because when you have a really heavy snow, and they do some damage on the lower trunk and surface roots. But when they're underground, it is almost impossible to control problems with with voles, especially. It's there's really no deterrence, because they're herbaceous animals, and there's really nothing that we can put on the roots that's reliable to control them.
Thank you. Just one kind of a open-ended question. What would be your best advice for homeowners this spring, as far as in their gardens, or how to keep their trees healthy? What would you suggest? What's something really important they should know?
Plant early and water correctly, because we deal with overwatering is probably one of the biggest problems that I see on a day in and day out basis in the landscape. Because here in Middle Tennessee, we have really heavy clay soils that hold a ton of water, and we get a good bit of water from Mother Nature on an annual basis. And sometimes of the year it's much heavier than others, especially winter, spring, and fall. And that can, just by the nature of Mother Nature, without even adding irrigation in, cause problems with root rot. And that's honestly the biggest problem we deal with on probably 75-80% of the landscapes out there.
So in August, though, when we have a serious drought for 3 or 4 weeks or whatever, what's the correct way to water in those situations?
I always like a very deep watering. So I'll tell somebody, if during those hot, dry times, if they're established plants, once or twice a week for half hour, 45 minutes is the best way I feel to do it, because what you're doing is that longer duration water is pushing that water deeper and encourages the roots to be further down. When you're doing shorter durations more frequently, the roots tend to stay closer to the surface. And because of that, they drought stress a lot easier when they're closer to the surface.
Well, Travis, you have provided us with a wealth of information today. And I know that Shannon and Brian and some of the others who are asking questions have certainly benefited from your expertise. And our friend Brian, actually, he's a member of our tree board here. He has one other question. What happened to Crepe Myrtles last year? Most in the area seem to suffer coming out of the winter. So will those recover this year?
Most of them, if they're a healthy Crepe Myrtle, they really should. So from what the Crepe Myrtles are suffering from, a lot of them got a really bad freeze in the fall of 19, like about the first week of November. It dropped down to, I think, like low teens or so for about 2 days, and the trees were completely not ready to be for those cold temperatures. They were still in full leaf, still had a lot of water moving through their stem, and that freeze froze their vascular system. And then we couple that with a little bit of a late frost in 2020. That's why most of the Crepe Myrtles looked really rough. So what we've done this winter is reset the crowns on them and say, hey, these are going to look a little odd for a year or two, but as long as they're healthy, they come right back.
Mine have recovered quite nicely. Yeah.
And 3/4 of the Crepe Myrtles that were looking rough have recovered. It's the ones that have had underlying health issues that have been more stressed.
Great information. And we appreciate all the information that you've given us today. Lynn, we certainly want to remind people here today that, Facebook has been our hub for kind of our Arbor Day celebration this year. We've had contests, we've had tree giveaways this week, and then on Saturday at 11 a.m. we will have our Arbor Day virtual presentation. And so there's where all the people will learn who won the contest, and we'll hear from a lot of our city leaders and also Lynn, and we'll be kicking off a brand new contest there on Saturday.
Yes, we'll be announcing the winner of our writing contest. And I believe there will be a video of that. Is that correct?
Yes, there will be. Our winning essay contest winner will read her essay, and it is fabulous, as we have already heard that, and so you won't want to miss that. You know what? Shannon brings up a great question. How can people actually get in consultation with Travis? Brian was one of our other tree board members. So I'm sure that you can provide some information as to how people could get in touch with you, Travis, if someone would like to reach out to you.
I mean, the easiest way to get in touch with me is to get onto the Bartlett website. And from there, you can go to the section of the Meet Your Arborist, and you can set up an appointment with us from there. It's actually pretty easy that way, or you can give our office a call.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate all your time today, Travis. And as always, Lynn, thank you for being here and your time also as a volunteer. We appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Travis.
You're welcome.